Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Cinema Savvy. It is myself, George, joined once more by Tayte, and bringing back to the channel Tom Pickup from Really 007 Podcast to not talk about James Bond, but I'm sure we will bring it up today a fair few times because we are, of course, doing our Mission Impossible 2 review released in the year 2000, directed by John Woo, starring, of course, Tom Cruise as Ethan Hunt. But before we get into that, how are we all doing tonight?
Yeah, doing okay. This one's a bit of a shock to the system. If anyone watched our Succession review from last week, you would have known, that I went from watching this straight into the Succession finale. So it was a bit of tonal whiplash that I'm currently dealing with at the time of recording. But yeah, interested to get into the nitty-gritty with this film.
I've got all those to binge actually, Tayte. Succession. So the last series, yeah. But this is, this is just great. I'm obsessed with this. Spoiler alert.
Yeah. I mean, you did message me straight away, like months and months ago, and I was sort of quietly telling people behind the scenes, like, we're going to do Mission Impossible this year. Straight away, like Mission Impossible 2. And I was like, perfect, because if I'm being honest about how, we haven't recorded the later ones, but I was like, I don't want everyone to message me saying Mission Impossible Fallout, because that's going to make life hard. But Mission Impossible 2, I know there's been a great variety so far, which is really exciting because, like our Bond reviews, when we had you on, Tom, the Mission Impossible films, certainly these earlier ones, they are not like a Bond film in the sense, but it is a different director. It's a different approach. It's different direction, action, storytelling. And I think Mission Impossible 2 is the one that stands out the most of everything. For better for some, for worse for some. It at least makes it an interesting discussion. And I'm gonna give my thoughts in a short while about some of those things. But before I get into it, I'm going to put you both on the spot. Tayte, I know we couldn't get you off the first one.
Yeah.
And then we'll do Tom straight after. Can you remember the first Tom Cruise film you saw?
The first Tom Cruise film I saw?
Or maybe memory where you remember it properly. Or it's a very good question. And he's been around for quite a while now. So I think there's going to be a lot of different answers.
Get back to me on that. Jesus. Okay, let me think. So, I remember when I was growing up, I had seen Rain Man from not a reasonably young age, but quite a young age at least. But genuinely, and this is going to be quite funny here, I genuinely think I saw Mission Impossible 2 before I saw Mission Impossible 1 for the first time. And I genuinely think that Mission Impossible 2 might have been my first kind of exposure to Tom Cruise. There's a possibility. It's either going to be Mission Impossible 2 or it's going to be Rain Man. I'm not sure which one came first between the two of those.
Two very different films.
Yeah.
I think the first time I can remember was because a lot of his films were probably like 15s and stuff. So I never saw Top Gun growing up. I only saw it fairly recently. But the one we had on, that was meant to be for kids was Legend. But it's absolutely terrifying. Some really scary stuff going on in that film. So the Ridley Scott one with
I've not seen it, but I was going to say that is the Ridley Scott one, isn't it? It's one of his first films, isn't it? It's before Top Gun.
Yeah, he's very, very young in that, and he's excellent, and it's messed up. You've got like a sort of young boy voiced by a middle-aged woman, this kind of stuff in it, and it's really scary. And yeah, I think apart from that, I did see Rain Man fairly young, and then I don't know, you just sort of. You can't really remember. He's always been a film star, hasn't he, throughout our whole lives? And Mission Impossible might have been the first one I saw at the cinema of his, which we were still quite young then. And a bit like Bond's, when I had License to Kill, we were it was 15, so we couldn't see that. Mission Impossible 2 was a 15 or a 12 or something, so we couldn't see that either.
I mean, yeah, this is 15 because I had the Blu-ray with me yesterday and it did say 15. And there is some interesting behind the scenes of this. That there's not as much as the first one, but there are pieces and there are puzzles to put together, which does make this quite exciting for this discussion. Because I was just worried we're going to come on, talk a generic action thing, people will disagree, but we do have some stuff to go through with this. But before we even get into that, we want everybody to please comment along with their thoughts on Mission Impossible 2. If you're a fan of these films, the franchise, if this one is your favorite, if you're a fan of this one, please do comment it. No one's going to get judged for their opinions of stuff like that. So do get involved, hit the like button, and subscribe if you like Mission Impossible. Subscribe like Tom Cruise, because we're going to be doing these every single Tuesday as we build up to Dead Reckoning Part 1. And if you want to follow us on social media for more other stuff, you can get us on Twitter and Instagram at Zimmer_Savvy, Facebook and Netflix.com/CinemaSavvy, with a link to Redbubble in that description below. But as we always do, we'll kickstart with the IMDb plot synopsis. Tayte, do you want to have the honor of reading this one this week?
Yes, sure. So, IMF agent Ethan Hunt is sent to Sydney to find and destroy a genetically modified disease called Chimera. Very simple.
Yeah, simple, effective, not 3 paragraphs like the IMDb like to do.
No.
And it pretty much is bang on for once. And kind of in line of that, we'll get into the plot, the story, the production shortly. Very quickly, I know we've kind of, I guess, touched on this a little bit already, but I was going to ask everyone for their memories of this film. Now, you both spoke ever so briefly about it, but if I saw this for the first time, I'll go first. Back in 2015, just before Rogue Nation came out, I had seen Ghost Protocol. I hadn't seen 5. We were building up to it, I think there's a very old video of 1 to 4 like looped in. And I watched 1, 2, and 3 for the first time. I hated the second one, I'm not going to lie. But that's a very, not different me. That was... Watching this is the second time I've ever seen this film. And it was the same last week for Mission Impossible 1, which is quite awkward to, I guess, say on these streams. And Mission Impossible 3, I think, I've seen a few times. But it's made it more exciting building up to this, knowing that I'm going to rewatch them. I didn't rewatch them before Fallout came out. And I went in with like the lowest expectations to rewatch this because I just didn't like it that first time. But I can't sit here and say I've seen more John Woo films since. But I'm far more familiar with John Woo in terms of him as director in the last 8 years, which has kind of softened my thoughts on this film. And I think that the Bond stuff, again, there's a lot of comparisons, which we'll get into as this video goes on, which I kind of think makes me appreciate this more in a slightly bizarre way. So yeah, I don't have many memories per se, but that is my Mission Impossible 2 background.
So for me, I'm pretty sure from my first viewing, I remember the climbing scene at the start, the bouldering. And then I remember the motorbikes crashing into each other at the end. Apart from that, the entire film was a blur. And I do remember watching it, not when I was like young, but like, I want to say like 11, 12 years old. And that's all I took from the entire film. I don't know what happened in the middle. I have no idea. All I remember is the very, very start and the very, very end. And that was it. It's very interesting. We'll talk about my thoughts on the film as we go through the review, but I'll put it this way. I like all the other Mission Impossible films. I love some of the Mission Impossible films. I do not like this film.
Yeah, so as I just said, I think, Mission Impossible I saw at the cinema. And then, I must have been old enough to watch it. I don't know why I didn't watch this one at the cinema. But maybe it was because my brothers were probably too young to watch it, so I didn't watch it with them. But I remember, like, Chris, my mate from school, he was obsessed with it, like, just absolutely obsessed with it. And the fact we did actually, like, Rob, particularly from our podcast, we were obsessed with Hard Target, which is one of John Woo's first Hollywood films with Jean-Claude Van Damme. And we had that on video and we watched it to death. It's just some of the best action you've ever seen. So on paper, it's, I don't know why we weren't really interested in it at the cinema. I must have seen it on video, rented it on video, and I can't really remember liking it particularly. Maybe it was just too much action and not enough plot for me at the time. But then I'd only revisited it for the first time maybe 5 years ago, and then I reckon I've seen it 3 or 4 times since then. So that again, spoiler alert, that tells you a bit more about the film for me, yeah.
that's what makes it exciting, though, and that's what I'm looking forward to with this series. That we've got sort of different people coming on each week, and I think everyone's experience of every film is going to be different. And I know Bond gets compared a lot to Mission Impossible, sometimes very fairly. I think sometimes unfairly. They're clearly the best two spy/action franchises we have. And I'd say the Mission Impossible has just borrowed a lot from the Bond films over the years. Probably more obvious in the next couple of films. But if we stick with this, one thing I'm going to switch on this week. So last week was the first episode, so we've just been changing a few things. We're going to talk about not necessarily the legacy of the film, but I want to talk about box office first, because this isn't a franchise where, like Spielberg, every week we talk about like 10 Oscar nominations, winning 5, blah, blah, blah. 30 years later, every charge group this film, like of Spielberg films.
We could mention this film got nominated for 2 Razzies.
Well, that's just unfair. But what really caught me off guard, and I'm telling you this, I had no idea about this, and I've grown up being obsessed with box office numbers, stuff like that. This was the highest grossing film of the year 2000. Now, not only did that catch me off guard that it was a Mission Impossible film, the actual number it grossed, it's still obviously a lot of money. It's $550 million. It beat Gladiator by 100 mil. And I'm going to bring up Gladiator later on again, because there's another amazing Gladiator link going on in this film, which I'll talk about. But I just couldn't wrap my head around it. And then I started doing the highest grossing film year by year, because I love looking at stuff like that. This is like not just the lowest highest grossing film of the year, like of the century so far. I think like since like 1992, like only 1995 was lower, which was I think maybe one of the Die Hard of a Vengeance. So in a very surprising way, not surprising this film made the money it did, just that there wasn't really any of the juggernauts out yet. The year before, you got The Phantom Menace, you've got Matrix. The year after, you got Harry Potter and another Jurassic Park. So that really surprised me. And I said, I know box office isn't be all and end all. But then the question I'm going to very quickly put on the spot to you both is Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning going to be the highest grossing film of 2023? Tayte, I know we sort of discussed it, at least for summer-wise, in the video recently, but just a very quick on the spot question. Do people think it could be?
Possibly.
I mean, I don't know what else is out, but given Top Gun Maverick, people are so up for this, and Tom Cruise, I can't think of much that will be bigger than that. I think it'll be absolutely enormous.
As an outside chance, I get the feeling that Barbie could do something.
I know you're still on the Barbie train, aren't you?
I'm still on the Barbie train.
Barbie can't beat Tom Cruise, though.
No.
I don't know. I don't know. Something
9 days apart.
Film. Yeah.
Barbie's like the film Twitter, though. Like film Twitter's highest. It's like Babylon, right? Outside of film Twitter, no one watched Babylon. Yeah. Obviously, everyone's going to watch Barbie, but it's not. Yeah, Barbie, July 21st.
Or depends on how much hype Into the Spider-Verse has behind it. Or Across the Spider-Verse has behind it.
Animated films make a lot of money, especially if kids ask.
Elemental, Pixar, new film coming out, maybe. Not sure. Maybe less so on that front, but Spider-Man is very popular.
Yeah, 12. Yeah, it is 12. This, and this is it. It's exciting. Not that money means everything, but I think because no one ever thought Top Gun would make the money it did, and I think that's why it's like it's almost like a never bet against Tom Cruise thing, isn't it? That's where I'm sort of going now, especially after seeing this franchise numbers. But moving on from the year 2000, getting into some behind the scenes, as we like to do. So before John Woo was brought on board, we're going to give John Woo his own section. They did ask Brian De Palma to come back. And at the very early stages, De Palma was involved, which I'm going to say something arguably controversial. And it's not criticism of the recent films. I really do like the fact that Mission Impossible films have had very different directors, at least until Macquarie's like come in for the ending to sort of take it to that next level. But I love the fact that some of the people, I mean, De Palma, J.J. Abrams, Brad Bird, John Woo, that's completely different filmmakers, different styles, different approaches. And I think that's what's really pushed this series upwards. But I couldn't imagine a second De Palma Mission Impossible. It'd probably be great, probably be really good. But when he eventually left the project, Tom Cruise offered it to John Woo after he watched Face Off, which completely understandable. I love that it was Face Off as well. That was the one that got him involved. And John Woo, obviously, done a couple of Hollywood films, and you mentioned one of them there, Tom, as well. I think he'd done 3 before Mission Impossible. I could be wrong, and I know. Did he do? He did I'm not seeing it. One of the really good Asian action films starring. Oh God, what's his name?
Yeah,
I don't want to say that.
Yeah.
No. Oh God.
Carry Fat, maybe.
I don't want to say the one from Shang-Chi because that's very disrespectful to like one of the most like famous Asian actors of all time. But anyway, that'll come back to. It might be Police Story. It might be one of the Police Story films. No, it's not.
Hard Boiled was one of them.
Hard
Boiled. That's it. Sorry. Yeah. Ignore my embarrassment there. So, Tom Cruise was clearly a fan. And like I said, the selling of it to John Woo was we're going to have a different person come on every film, essentially. Bit awkward, when you realise that De Palma was on board and left. But what are your thoughts on bringing in John Woo? I know it's easier to talk about now, but contextually, in the mid to late 90s, because this film was heavily delayed due to Eyes Wide Shut. So it was meant to film, I believe, in 98 or release in 98. It was on board for a quick sequel. And because of Eyes Wide Shut, Kubrick film, as Kubrick films always do, they go over schedule. Everything's going to be perfect. This was like lost by over a year. And there's some incredible casting stories we'll talk about later on and things that changed in Hollywood due to this film being delayed, which is quite remarkable. But John Woo was on board. And I'm just going to say, before I get into direction, the first cut of the film was 3.5 hours. Which I had no idea about the behind the scenes. It's been really interesting trying to read up on some of this. And obviously the studio said immediately it's got to be 2 hours. I think it's 2 hours 3, including credits. And the stories that Tom Cruise and John Woo, not necessarily falling out, but Tom Cruise took over the edit and Tom Cruise was doing the editing to get it from 3.5 hours down to 2 hours. Now with that out in the open, Tayte, putting you on the spot, not necessarily explains the film, but does that have an indication of how this film potentially turned out for viewing?
Well, my next question would be, to extend the film even further, was it just all slow-mo? Like, was every single shot in slow motion? I mean, on paper, you look at John Woo's work coming into the film, you go, yeah, that's exactly who we want. Especially for what the film was at the time, which was, we're going to make it more action-based, kind of less kind of spy-based, if that made sense. We're going to move away from the kind of, Jean Le Carre kind of spy novel-styled kind of filmmaking and stuff like that into the kind of Matrix, kind of we want loads of action, blah, blah, blah. So that's perfect decision to make on paper. I say on paper because it just didn't pay off at all. Dare I say, like, it made money, but like this franchise could have really tanked off this. Critically received okay at the time, but in retrospect, not as well loved. If it wasn't as well loved at the time as well, this franchise.
There's always going to be a third. It is worth saying this is his first ever sequel as an actor.
Yeah, this is his first ever franchise that he even tried, to dip into.
Now, I know Top Gun got its sequel last year. Aside from Top Gun and Mission Impossible, has he ever been in a sequel? Oh, no, Jack Reacher, ignore me.
I was going to say.
It was Jack Reacher, wasn't there? But that was something
you've got The Mummy, which is part of the Dark Universe.
Oh god, that photo just sits there like immortally. The tweet still exists from the Universal account. The Dark Universe is like coming or something, isn't it? And it's just they got the whole cast there. They got the photo shoot.
Could you say his cameo in Austin Powers as well? Does that count?
If it had more than one, a great cameo though.
But anyway, no, I think kind of looking at the information put in front of us, 3.5 hour cut. The film itself in its current state, which is an action mess, kind of disaster piece, in my own honest opinion, it wasn't a good decision to go with John Woo. I feel like maybe given more time for the film, or maybe even given time for it to grow with some more delays, maybe kind of some reconsiderations, The Matrix was big, and therefore films wanted to try and replicate that and try and get as much in as possible from that style of filmmaking. John Woo's kind of a director who already likes his slow motion and already likes his kind of, grand action set pieces. So it just made sense at the time, but in retrospect, it just doesn't look that way. And in the end, I think I described this to George as, because I've only seen the first 3 Fast and Furious films, this is what I expect the Fast and Furious films to be like from this point on. Like, there's a lot of car chases, a lot of, action set pieces.
This is real. This is stunts. I will give them this, right?
They actually go into space in the Fast and Furious films.
I'm saying that even on some of the simplistic Fast and Furious set pieces, they still don't really do it.
I know, but for me, even though this is real, they use the stunts and everything like that. It fits into that kind of mindless action without a purpose category. Especially when the first film was so kind of meticulous and thought out and more of kind of a spy drama procedural with some action elements thrown in. It's such a massive change for the franchise to go in that direction. And they kind of tame it down and bring it back a little bit with the third film. They kind of, from the third film onwards, they really do cut out kind of what exactly they want the films to be. So in the end, especially with kind of the direction done, like some of the villain elements, the music involved in this film as well, it feels like that edgy second album that just doesn't quite work, that kind of experimental piece that they're just trying to push different ideas out there.
Yeah,
Tom,
I can't believe there was a 3.5 hour cut. I mean, I'd love to see that.
It existed, by the way. If anyone wants to know the story, somewhere in Asia, this is a real story, by the way. This is how deep I was trying to get some research in. VHS copies of this 3.5 hour cut existed, were released, and when the studio found out, they disappeared. Now, I can't tell you how, but you got to think back in, very different conversation, but you think of like the Pam and Tommy that came out last year, right? Pan Ransom tape that goes viral in the early days of the internet. You'd have assumed back in the day they were probably thinking, if this gets online,
would that be just very quickly? Would that be the rarest of signatures if you managed to get a Tom Cruise signature on a 3.5 hour cut of Mission Impossible 2?
It'd probably incinerate you. It's probably him that stopped it. He probably went on tour, went around Asia, went into every house, just running across the countries to get these VHS tapes.
Yeah.
Because I couldn't believe, and the question is, and it's never been known, is how did that cut leak? I don't know. Someone somewhere's going to have an answer for it, right? Could it be
someone somewhere's got to have the cut in like deep storage.
Well, this is what I'm curious about. I wanted
every single one.
What happened to the VHS copies? Like, did they genuinely get did a studio go in full power, lawyers, everything? Like, give us a list of everyone you ever sold this to. I just fundamentally cannot believe after 23 years it hasn't leaked online. That even a negative scan at like 360p, whatever it'd be, it's remarkable. It kind of, you've ever seen the film Fanboys? I know it's more Star Wars. It's a great comedy for any Star Wars fans, but it's set in 1999. There's a group of people that grew up on the films. One of them's got terminal cancer. He's not going to make it to the Phantom Menace. So they go on a road trip to break into Lucas Ranch to steal a copy of Phantom Menace. Yeah. Incredibly heartwarming film. Great film. Yeah. And then, like, somebody do this in Mission Impossible 2 now. Like, there's going to be like a diehard Tom Cruise
this is not a Mission Impossible 2 review anymore. This is a public outcry for information.
I just can't wrap my head around it. But sort of going back into the conversation, Tayte, one thing, kind of talking about the original there, one thing I respect this film for, every single thing the first film did, this went the complete opposite way, right? There's no gunfight in the first film. Okay, we'll have about 5 in this one. First film, even the score, we'll get to music later of Hans Zimmer, but it's quiet, it's Danny Elfman, it's meticulous, it's very paranoid. This is just guns blazing heavy metal. And everything the first film did, this went completely the opposite way. And I have this sense of respect for that, which I never thought I would. It's like it's not like John Woo came on board as a suit and were like, John Woo, you're working for us now. It was, John Woo, go and make a John Woo film. starring Tom Cruise, but also Tom Cruise is going to be Tom Cruise because when we get to the stunts later, there's a lot of interesting stuff with John Woo as well and Tom Cruise that happened. But Tom, what are sort of your thoughts like? Because I know you like this art. Do you enjoy how different this is, like genre wise? Because it's like paranoid thriller to action.
Yeah, I didn't realize until you said it then that Brian De Palma refused the second one, because all I knew was that up until the fourth or the fifth, Tom Cruise was very adamant. I want a different director for every one. A bit like, you get Bond standalone films. It's the same sort of thing, and they should each have their own feel. And you're absolutely right. These two next to each other is the biggest gear change. All the other ones you could say are fairly similar compared to these two. And I think I'm old. You had to be there in the sort of early 2000s. This was honestly the perfect storm. So we'll talk about like Limp Bizkit, that kind of rock vibe, the long hair for the this was in vogue. Tom Cruise just having long hair was a massive thing in the press. I'm not joking. I know. If the first film you saw of him, then you're like, oh, he's always had long hair. But that was John Woo was. He probably wouldn't have been a famous director, but Face Off. I mean, nearly everyone who sees that film loves that film, and he was just getting better and better. His films were getting more and more ridiculous, and I think if you marry up somebody like that with somebody who wants to do proper action stunts. And like John Woo, you give him Hans Zimmer, you give him Tom Cruise, you give him all the best tools that he could possibly have, massive budget, and this is what's going to happen. It's massive, it's ridiculous, it's so over the top, it's completely different in tone, but I like the contrast personally, and that's the same with James Bond films. I love the silly ones, I love the serious ones. And some of them have both in each film. And I we might get onto it later, but I can make a valid case that this is the most romantic Mission Impossible film that there is.
No, you can. Yeah, you can. I'm with you on that.
I didn't realise it.
Mission Impossible 3's got,
It's like already married off screen, aren't they, in between films?
Yeah, but it's more about kind of the relationship, isn't it, between him and his wife? So
yeah, but no one would ever say
it's a very good case, though.
Yeah,
but one thing we'll talk about with John Woo, because I said I've not seen a lot of his work, but a really sad thing I've read. He's. It sounds. I mean, it's not Bond. There's not been 2060s, but John Woo's the only director not to have been asked back for a Mission Impossible film, which is kind of sad. But then you think there's only actually been 5 of them. So
I don't think he needed to. I don't think he needed to, because I think he's done everything he can in this film.
No, exactly. And what fascinated me reading it, we'll get onto it on the fourth one, but Brad Bird, I still find it mesmerising that he even got the chance to do live action with his background. But there's some stuff behind the scenes. We'll get to it, the stunts, because that's going to be some interesting discussions. But we do have the signature stuff. We've got lots of slow-mo, as Tayte said. We've got the doves. We've got the action. And I, as I said, I respect it for it. They committed. And the last thing you want, in this day and age, not to just dig at Marvel, because, this is 8 years before the MCU even began. This is before X-Men, and this is the only time we're going to bring X-Men in today's video. But there's nothing worse than seeing a director who has a filmmaker. There's not a director, a filmmaker, someone that has an approach, that has an idea, that has, even if people dislike it, their approach to filmmaking needs to make them stand alone. There's nothing worse than seeing that getting sort of ripped out by corporate. And that has happened a lot more, I'd say, in the last 10, 15 years of filmmaking than other times in our lifetime. I can't obviously sit there and talk about the industry for, 100 plus years like it's been. But that's certainly how I've felt. And the Mission Impossible films, like Bond, have had that. We'll let the director make the film now. Bond very recently done that more so than in the past. And that's one of the big questions moving forward is, who do they bring on board and what will that mean? But yeah, let's talk story though. Let's talk the mission. Now, the question I'm going to ask everyone each week, obviously by the story, it solves itself. Is it an impossible mission?
Not really.
Like, are the stakes there? How? Because last week was really interesting that when we spoke about it, the impossible mission was the going down on the getting the knock list, right, and the build up and everything. But with this one, I'll say this. it feels like I don't say generic action film, but it's not a convoluted plot. It's actually very simple, the storytelling mechanism. And that's where the function comes in as an action film, that it's very easy to follow, to the point that it ends up being, saving the damsel in distress storyline. But does anyone feel like these stakes make it, as Anthony Hopkins would say, this is Mission Impossible, not Mission Difficult? Still the weirdest line of dialogue I might have ever heard. But
line
that's why
dropping the
Ethan Hunt,
franchise.
that's what Ethan Hunt says. It is pretty difficult, not impossible.
I don't think this mission's impossible. I think this mission is very bog standard, kind of typically possible. There's no point in the story where you think, oh wow, how is he going to get out of this one kind of vibes. It's just, it is what it is. It's a simple kind of recover the virus, make sure it doesn't get out kind of job. There's at no point really within the plot where any of the characters really feel like there are any heavy amounts of risk. Maybe you could make the case that, Tandiwi Newton's character is at risk at one stage when she gets infected towards the end. Apart from that, it's just, recover the virus, make sure it doesn't get out, kind of simple job. It's got to be out of all of the films, it's got to be the easiest mission, right?
Oh God.
I mean, yeah, you could argue that. Fair enough, and the sort of real high stakes stuff is the more emotional stuff when she injects herself, and so you can say, well, that's nothing to do with Anthony Hopkins' mission, is it? That just happens. That just happens because that's her decision. I mean, there is spy work, isn't there? He has to infiltrate, make sure that this. But you could argue she has to do nearly as much as he does, really, in terms of pretending that she's coming back to him. I think having like a massive world-killing virus back then, before COVID, no one really thought about these things. So it is quite high stakes in that sense. But then I'm just thinking by the end, she's just on her own. So I don't know whether she's just walking off the cliff.
I mean, she's walking off the cliff. If she falls off that cliff and dies, nothing changes. If she lives, nothing changes. Yeah. Like there is no change at all in there.
No,
but
by that time you're so invested in the characters. And the story.
It's more of at that stage in the story, it's more kind of character driven rather than plot driven, and
I guess that's something Mission Impossible's not had. But one unfair thing I see about Ethan, everyone always says Ethan is not a character; he's Tom Cruise. Well, obviously, he's Tom Cruise. But what are people's thoughts like on the character as a whole? Actually, a really good segue. I didn't mean to. But the character of Ethan Hunt. Yes, we know he's Tom Cruise, and it is almost impossible to separate Tom Cruise from any role he's ever played. Almost any role he's played. Certainly in the action films. I kind of what you're getting at, Tom. I actually quite like that. Now you've sort of put it to me in that way that you forget about the mission because it has become these characters and. I think I'm invested in them to the point of not necessarily the character, but I like the actors and actresses in this film. Thandie Newton, who I didn't actually, the first film I saw him was Norbit back in 2007. Love that film, by the way. A lot of people don't.
Underrated.
Yeah, and I think I've not seen Westworld, which I know Anthony Hopkins I think is in as well.
Yeah, that's classic. Mm-hmm.
And it was really not interesting to see him in this, but I like that they went for the romance story. That I don't want to say it's safe. And certainly you look at this franchise as a whole, it certainly stands out. And I think it gives someone a bit more personality than it did before. I think I'd read somewhere that Tom Cruise actually wanted like that to happen. I mean, he's a producer on these films. He calls the shots. He hires the directors. Of course, he's involved in the story. But I feel like it's something in the year 2000 that, he's done films at this point. Obviously, Eyes Wide Shut would have been his most recent one. But he's done... His 90s films are almost all dramas. And he's worked with auteurs, he's worked with some of the best, and he's still going to progress with that into the early 2000s. And it's really interesting that what they do with Ethan in this. I don't mind it. Does it work for me? I'm not sure, but I respect it for trying to be different to what you could assume it would be.
I'd say Ethan's character in this film is definitely tied to the era. With the first film, he is probably the most character that you can get from almost the entire franchise. I mean, it's the thing that kind of sets the bedding and stuff like that. Kind of puts you exactly where you need him to be, and really delves into kind of his way of going about his work. In this film, I feel like they tried to make him too cool. They were trying so hard to make him cool because Neo from the Matrix is cool.
Yes, that's what it is. I was waiting. The whole final act. I was watching it, and first of all, I was like, "Is this sort of meant to be John Wick?" And I was like, "Obviously, The Matrix was the year before."
Yeah.
I
It's everything from like, oh, he goes bouldering. He's got long hair. Look at that. We'll get him to wear the glasses and chuck it away towards the camera. We'll get him to say a cool line. In the first film, he'd be so about the mission. He wouldn't be off on holiday. If he was off on holiday, he would be off on holiday maybe doing a bit of work, or he'd be off on holiday completely incognito, not even like bouldering in the middle of nowhere. That isn't the kind of thing that the Ethan Hunt would do from the first film. He's doing these cool, radical things all the way throughout the film, just so that he can act cool. There's no real reason behind it. It's just a complete character shift purely based on the fact that they wanted this film to fit that vibe and fit that era.
I'm telling you now, this is the coolest film you'll ever see. Well, no, but at the time, it genuinely
I do
is.
feel like in the year 2000, the Y2K. I mean, okay, I was 3/4 when this came out, but I feel that you're onto it there, Tom, because a lot of people I've spoke to who are older per se, not too much older, but when people have talked about this, they are a lot more. I don't want to say nostalgic because I always hate that being overused, but it does. I'm going to go with Die Another Day, right? Let's keep on the Bond talk. I was 6 years old, and that was one of the coolest things, right? And as I've grown up, and I've come across the people that hated it, whether they're older, whether they're younger, it is that you had to be there to have it at a certain level of how much you enjoy it. I genuinely think that the year 2000, with this coming out, again, it's not it's not superhero era yet. It's not comic book stuff. It's not Harry Potter, which was humongous for that decade. It's almost like you go to look. If anyone's curious, look at the box office reach of like the 90s. It's not necessarily franchises. It's not necessarily sequels. It's a bit of everything. And I think this is why this film stands out. And also a 4-year wait,
that's massive.
A second Tom Cruise film. Like he's Magnolia's the year before, which he's had his Oscar nomination. Well, he's I think that's his second or third. And then Tom Cruise is doing this. It is. I'm in awe of it. I don't know why. I'm starting to really enjoy this film now. This talks out. It's like therapy.
Well, I think to go back to the character and Tom Cruise and all that, you're absolutely right. At the time, Tom Cruise wasn't particularly seen as a big action star. It was more like, oh, he's actually quite small. Can he do action? Okay, Mission Impossible is brilliant, but in that is more of a. He's sort of. It's so intense, isn't it? The whole film that you're worried about what could happen to him. This he's like just an action hero. Everything you could screenshot most of this film, and nearly all of them would be him looking cool. Whether it's on a bike, in the air, having a fight.
I want to have a look at where's that.
The kicking of the gun with the sand and catching it.
That's too good. That's the coolest thing I've ever seen.
It really is. The crazy thing is, it's still Tom Cruise being Tom Cruise. Like when we get to the I'm going to talk about like some of the behind the scenes and how he approached, because it's still the Tom Cruise of today where he's clearly trying to kill himself whilst making films, and that's still what I can't wrap my head around. But yeah, his character in this it's such a ramp up for Ethan Hunt, and I think then moving on to the later films, because we've seen him do this insane action in this film. It then makes everything else more believable what he's going to do, because we've seen him do it at a variety of different ages.
He's not maybe too vulnerable, but it's not like Bond, where with Bond until recently, he never looked like he was going to break a sweat. He was always so nonchalant and the mission was so easy. With this, it's coming back to that sort of old fashioned, even though that you do get the love story, which is like he genuinely cares for this woman. But when he comes to the action, he's so assured, isn't he? He's absolutely there's never a moment where you think, "Oh no, he could die here" or anything like that. But that's the taste of time again. It's just and we mentioned Dine of the Day before. It's a similar kind of thing, and it's the same editor, and there's a lot of links. And John Woo was asked to direct Dine of the Day. There's loads of links because that was the. It looks old fashioned now, a lot of it. I'll admit that, but I think this one's aged better than Dine of the Day. It's aged better than a lot of those films of the era, and that is probably Tom Cruise's best thing about it. I think
that'll be the stunts, practical set pieces, action sequences, and I think that's one thing that, again, as time goes by, I know the early 2000s, it is the CG boom, right? Look at this amazing new thing we can do; it can work. But obviously, the one thing is age, and it's that you can't. You just it would always look better if it's done in camera. And kind of moving on, we'll talk about some other characters. I mean, we spoke about the Dewey Newton, but we'll get into a bit more. So, playing the role of Naya, really interesting one. The first cast member on board after Tom Cruise in this film, before there was even a script. Nicole Kidman suggested her to Tom Cruise, and they literally cast her. Nicole Kidman and Tom Cruise were together at this point, I believe. Eyes Wide Shut, of course. And that's how she came to be. Very young on this as well. I think she was 27 when it released, probably filming at the age of 25. And again, we spoke about what do we think of the character? Because, as you said earlier, Tom, it is more of a romance. And the one thing I'd say, if I'm doing it, that I appreciate why they didn't do it in this film at this time as well. I know she's actually spoke quite well about Tom Cruise. They did an interview a couple of years ago where she spoke about her struggles on set. The dialogue really wasn't working, and apparently Tom Cruise was basically with her for he would then read her lines out, she'd read his, and he basically was really stressed as a producer, but understood that the script wasn't working. It's not her fault, and she says that she felt sorry for him. So there's some really interesting behind the scenes stuff. There's not a lot of it, but it is very much so that I think her character, I don't want to say wasn't well written, but the source material for them to work with as actors wasn't there. And I'm not saying if this was done today it'd be any different, but the one issue I have is that she doesn't get much action to do, but I never feel like it's ever at the point of we're more than a mission, a love interest, very Bond-esque, right? Those early Bond films where I think it would have had a couple of great, because I enjoy her performance in this, but it feels like Ethan Hunt has to do everything else around her. We get the old switcheroo placing the bet on at that point, but I wish she could have had a bit more to do. If that's fair.
Yeah, no, that's a fair comment. Because she's an incredibly talented actress. So the fact that, first of all, the script wasn't really working with her in the first place is quite a big thing. Even if it wasn't, I think I looked at kind of her projects before this. She'd done a few films and kind of a few TV shows and stuff like that. She'd even been nominated for a variety of different things for her work. Nothing that I've actually recognized before, but she had a few years active so that she could build up her portfolio beforehand. So the fact that she was had experience and still didn't click with the script is never going to be a good thing in the first place. But you're absolutely right. Her roles in this film are to steal the envelope and then inject herself with the disease towards the end. And past that, there isn't really much that she can do. It's a bit of an unusual role because there could have been so much they could have done with her, especially with her link to the villain from the past and stuff like that. And, the fact that she is a civilian, she isn't a spy. She's been brought into this world almost out of blackmail and stuff like that. It's a very unusual dynamic to bring in and then not really expand upon and explore. So I feel like it's really kind of almost a wasted opportunity there. And, I don't know if that would need more time in the script or how much of a rewrite they had to do to get the character to actually work on screen or anything like that. But it does kind of make sense with kind of her lack of things happening in the film, that she didn't have much to work with in the first place.
I think with that, it may be if there's this 3.5 hour cut, a lot of the scenes could have been her trying to, with Dougray Scott, the scenes in the house, trying to not be seduced by him, maybe, because we don't know what length she had to go to. So that would have made it more interesting. Yeah, I hear what you're saying. I think for a 2000 film, there's quite a lot of agency. I know we use that word a lot. For like you say, civilian. Yes, there's this. He has to save her when they're doing the car chase, which is very GoldenEye, isn't it? But there's also like they say, the injecting yourself. That's quite a brave thing to do. In terms of Tandy Newton at the time, I don't think anyone knew who she was. And amazingly, even though she's in the biggest film of the year, don't think anyone knew who she was after. It was only really Crash that made a name. And even then, she's never really been a celebrity. And the fact that she's English and she's been in so many of these great films, I think as well to cast a mixed race woman in an absolute tentpole action film at the time is very brave. I think it's really admirable, and I think she's not clearly as good as an actress as she is now. Like Westworld, she's outstanding in that. She really is. But I think she's believable because Tom Cruise looks so young and so good for his age. I don't see an age gap between them. So I think she works really well in those scenes. And the scenes with Dougray Scott, you can see that she's scared. So I think I think for an action film, this is you're not going to get much better in terms of this kind of thing until maybe the Mission Impossible films have gone into that a bit more later. But I'd argue this is as good as it gets, really.
Yeah, no, that's very fair, and especially talking her career as well, because I wouldn't say she's a household name in a sort of really polite way that a lot of the general audience wouldn't know about her career. And even something like Solo, where I really enjoyed that film, she was definitely one of the actors that was done dirtiest the most. Quick off-camera death, opening early scenes. And I know that she spoke a lot about her experiences on sets as well. And as I said, Westworld is the one I've heard is the best. And I know Warner Brothers have just decided to cancel the last season, which was ridiculous. Everyone still got paid. Everyone got their budget. It's just David Zaslav being David Zaslav, bonkers stuff. But let's talk two of us very quickly. Rounding out the team, we've got Luther, played by Ving Rhames, the only other returning character from the first film, and Billy, played by John Paulson, who is the pilot. Very not weird role, shooting in Australia, to get someone more local. I can't remember who was originally cast as Billy, but the actor did have to drop out to do something with those delays, so it was a very last minute role that was brought on board. But the one, not necessarily criticism I have, it never feels like a team in this film, and I know that Mission Impossible, it is Ethan Hunt, it is Tom Cruise, but I think it's the first one. The whole purpose is you kill off the team to have Tom Cruise leading this paranoid story. Great. It's only when you get to the third film where I think they nail the team dynamic, and we'll talk about it more next week, but it is that Goldfinger, right? When they discover that formula 3 films in, and it takes a lot of franchises, a couple of films to get going. I don't think the team dynamic is there yet, but I'm very glad that Ving Rhames is always back and has a bit more to do in this one other than just sitting at a computer. He has to sit at a car, but get out the car before the bomb goes off. So it is interesting that I don't have much to say on that team, but just quickly, both your thoughts on those?
Yeah, I mean, it's always nice to see Ving Rhames. I mean, he's been the other presence throughout all of the films, hasn't he? So, it's nice to have at least one reoccurring thing in there. And I guess as well with John Paulson, I feel like this was kind of the prototype for Benji in the later films, right? Has to be, because his kind of quick-wittedness and the character felt very, very similar, just like an Australian version of it. So the fact they managed to get it right in the end, it took 3 films, but at least we're able to finally actually form a team when it comes to that third film, one that you can use throughout the films as well. But no, I completely agree with you. It does feel very kind of disjointed with the task force, very kind of thrown together. Not really much information known about each other other than Ethan and and Luther. That's kind of the only two who really kind of already have that connection going or anything like that. So it's almost a bit like kind of hodgepodge kind of put together, which makes it even weirder because that should up the stakes, but it really didn't. It just kind of settled the film down almost because they were very disjointed and I don't know. It's just an odd one, really.
Well, this John Paulson guy, I had completely forgotten about his character. I've never heard him mentioned before or since. I've looked at his CV. He's actually done a few. He's a director, isn't he? And he's done like video game Mission Impossible the year after, which I didn't know anything about that. I mean, that's interesting. But he of course he's pretending to be staff at the racing scene. I don't think any of the baddies come into contact with him, and I don't know whether they really do with Ving Rhames. So these guys are so out there trying to help that it's really only the main two, Tom Cruise and Tandy Newton, who are doing the main spy work. These guys are just there to help. I know what you mean. It's not ideally you'd want another character in there, but then it might. We're really this film is so stripped down. It's so basic in a good way for me that another character, it's like, well, what you have to find something for them to do. But even though there is no real reason why they should have fewer on this, I mean, there's good and bad with that. Like again with Bond, No Time to Die. It's great having all those characters, but there should be other people helping them. There's no reason why it's just those characters like Q. Scared of flying, and then he's flying anyway. But I think, Ving Rhames is a really good screen presence, and it's just that nice blanket, that comfort blanket, isn't it, for somebody you keep seeing. And they've got a good chemistry going. I agree. Simon Pegg raises it another level, but we're not in that age yet of Marvel humour where everyone has the same sense of humour and they all do quick-witted jokes and stuff, which Simon Pegg's very good at, by the way. I don't mean that's not criticism against it. But we're still at the stage where there are comedy moments, but it's a fairly serious film, really.
Yeah, no, I'm with you there. And kind of one of the characters, very quickly, an uncredited cameo. So Anthony Hopkins playing Mission Commander Swanbeck. I absolutely love this. I don't know if it's because it's Anthony Hopkins. I love it. But I just... Mission Commander Swanbeck just sounds like the most elite. Like Bond's like, we have M. It's like, well, I'm Mission Commander Swanbeck. This is Mission Impossible. And the crazy thing about this, Ian McKellen was originally in talks to play this role. And I am now desperate to see Ian McKellen appear in a Bond or Mission Impossible film. Don't care what capacity. Find a way to get him in. Because Anthony Hopkins, of course, was almost in GoldenEye. Those very early drafts where it would have been Bond's mentor rather than Sean Bean. And he ended up in Mission Impossible. But listen, it's one of those nice little cameos, isn't it? You want someone prestigious, someone elite. Getting Anthony Hopkins on board in the year 2000 as well. Again, before Marvel, before
for the second film of the franchise as well. You want to
all over the trailers as he would be. I like him in this, but sorry, the Ian McKellen thing I was going to say. If Ian McKellen had stuck with this, with the delays again, Eyes Wide Shut, a lot of backlog of delay, he wouldn't have played Gandalf. There's a parallel universe where Ian McKellen's Gandalf didn't happen because he had a 5-minute cameo in Mission Impossible. That would be insane to even consider. Unless Anthony Hopkins was then Gandalf instead.
Oh my god.
But I just wanted to get that in there for the Ian McKellen thing. I don't have anything to say on his character. I just like the fact that Anthony Hopkins is in it.
I don't have anything to say on him as well. I mean, he doesn't come back in the later films, so...
Yeah, that's it. They could have kept it going, or maybe Hopkins didn't want to do a cameo, who knows?
Yeah.
But
you had that, and you had The Grinch this year, where he's an uncredited narrator of the film. So I don't know what he was doing.
Of course he is. Yeah.
He's in 2 of the greatest films of all time, so that's fair. But he's just, he is one of my favourite actors ever. And just the cockiness of him in this film, he's just stood, and he looks crisp with his tan and everything. And it's meant to be Mission Difficult and not Mission Impossible. He's so, that slight American accent, and I love those scenes with him. But I think it just shows that you couldn't have him as like an M character in Bond, because he's just it'd be too distracting. Like, he's too much charisma, and it needs to be someone less well known. I know Ray Fiennes is well known, but he does it more low key and stuff. But I think it's perfect for this. And I kind of like, again, it's a one-off. He doesn't need to come back in the next one. He might have changed. Ethan Hunt's boss isn't that an important character. In this, he's on a little scene at the end as well, isn't he? And
Yeah.
I think he's great. Love him.
Excellent. And moving on, let's talk villains quickly. It was weirder with the first film because you had the whole teams told, don't trust, don't trust. Let's get traditional. We have proper villains. And we're going to talk a villain and a henchman. Sean Ambrose, played by Dougray Scott. Now, I have not seen, I don't believe, Dougray Scott in anything before. And I was rewatching this and I was like, I really haven't seen him in much. And that's not a discredit to him as an actor at all. It is, and to be fair, the Mission Impossible films, they've never, I know we just talked about Anthony Hopkins, they've never gone out for not the big names, but you know how Bond, and they've got it to a very good point with some of it. Bond's very contextual, right? Javier Bardem coming in for Skyfall, perfect actor to play that kind of villain. Rami Malek coming on board for No Time to Die, just won his Oscar, get him on board. Christoph Waltz, Inspector. There's a lot of context to these, and I like the fact Mission Impossible's never done that. They've always just cast who they need. They will never get a better villain than the third film, which we get to talk about next week with the legendary Philip Seymour Hoffman. But Dougray Scott dropped out of playing Wolverine in X-Men to do this film. The role of a lifetime that then went to Hugh Jackman. Again, this weird alternate universe where Dougray Scott, and if you see photos of his long hair, he actually looks like he'd be a phenomenal Wolverine. And also, like I said, he was cast. I like him in this film. I can't sit here and say there's a personality, there's this, there's that. He's obviously a villain, a very paint by the numbers villain. But I like the idea of a IMF agent impersonating someone that hasn't gone rogue. I like the stakes they set up with the Tom Cruise stuff with him for the opening scene. Obviously, the scene with Thandi Newton later on. I like that stuff about him, and that it does make it more interesting that Ethan Hunt has an equal, I guess they sort of put it as, and I think that's exciting for me as someone going into this film. I said, is he the best villain? Not by a long shot, but there's something there that I think works.
Yeah, it's kind of an intriguing parallel to, almost GoldenEye, with that kind of equal going rogue and kind of, that grand plan to take over the world off that, which is really, really interesting. But like you said, he's very paint by the numbers, like does his job well for the film, but not too compelling. Yeah. It's not like maniacal kind of like evil villain laughing levels of kind of comic villain, but it's close to that with kind of the action set pieces that are put forward. But as far as the job with acting, kind of what was given in front of him, and as far as his job within the film, it's a good villain. It works for the context of the film, he's a good actor. It's clear to see that. And it would have been a very weird kind of thing. Imagine if Hugh Jackman had swapped places with him and, that was how this film ended up. That would be a very, very weird kind of alternate timeline to see.
Yeah. I've not seen him in an awful lot of stuff. I saw he was in a TV series last year or the year before on BBC. But again, the biggest film of the year, no one remembers Dougray Scott's the villain. No one really remembers that Thandi Newton is the heroine or whatever, the Bond girl in it. And I think he's great. I think he fits the tone of the film where it's over the top, but it's not too campy. Maybe the film isn't. I mean, there's a lot of the film is fairly campy. It's not that camp, and I think his scenes. He's clearly needed to be someone who physically has the look of Tom Cruise for the plot to work at the beginning, and for the whole could he be an IMF agent? And he does that. He looks great. And again, I don't know whether he had a screen test for Bond in 2005, but he was certainly spoken of as a possible new Bond. And it's easy to see why. I mean, he keeps his Scottish accent for the film, which is quite interesting, isn't it? Given that we're in Australia most of the time. I think some of the lines are a bit babish, aren't they? Like, you bitch and you bastard and all this sort of stuff. But it's good fun, and yeah. And he's got an interesting relationship with Richard Roxburgh. It's like kind of homoerotic, isn't it? I don't really know. I mean, there's probably some of the stuff that was cut that I'd love to see what was going on there.
I mean, talking of Richard Roxburgh, who let's shout out for his legendary performance in Van Helsing, by the way. a very underrated villain performance. He's got a great presence in that. I know a lot of people don't like the film itself, but this is where it feels the most Bond. The henchman is called Hugh Stamp. It's clearly meant to be Huge Stamp.
Stamper.
Yeah, it would literally Tomorrow Never Dies
Yeah.
a couple of years before. And the fact that Richard Roxburgh is obviously Australian, is playing South African in it as well, which is one of my favourite accents. But I absolutely love him as a henchman because, you know, as you said, there's an interesting relationship there. When you get to the death, by the way,
Yeah.
the Stamp's death is got to be maybe not my favourite moment of the film, but the whole he's got a broken jaw where actually they're masked up. Now listen, the mask stuff in Mission Impossible is hilarious because you've got to assume at some point they had a mask made of the henchman ready to go, and he like Tom Cruise carries around masks of himself, just in case. I love the whole he's got a broken jaw, that's why he can't talk. Absolutely destroys him. Then clocks the bandage on the finger. What a great way to off the henchman. A great way to go out. A great moment for the villain. He's now basically lost everything. And I kind of like I like the dynamic they have in it. I don't have anything more to say other than he's got a great death scene for a henchman. A very different one we've not had in other films.
I'll go one further. This is my favourite scene of the film. This is the reveal of kind of the henchman being the one behind the mask, and you know, like the fact that he killed him, and it's just so well done. And it's not. I mean, Mission Impossible always does the fake outs with the mask. They do it in almost every single film, and every single time it's like first time you're watching, like, oh, okay, God, there we go. It's like a classic Mission Impossible moment, and this was a fantastic one. It's like the whole kind of, oh, his jaw's broken. Oh, well, I'm just, do you know what? I'm not going to do a monologue. I'm just going to kill you off straight away. And then suddenly it's the realization of, oh shit, I've just killed off my friend. You know, I've killed off my confidant. Like it's just a great moment on screen, and a fitting ending to a good henchman in the film. I mean, I've had many criticisms of this film tonight. I don't have any criticisms for the villain side of it. I think they both do an excellent job, kind of, you know, portraying what would be kind of the bad route taken of an IMF agent, and you know, they play it to how the film is, and you can't really comment on them past that. They do a good enough job given kind of material that's there for them, and you know, they provide entertainment on the screen throughout most of their scenes. I know for Richard Roxburgh and I guess Hugh Stamp, his character when he goes up to John Paulson's character playing the waiter and threatens him. Yeah, that's frightening.
And
that's
you watch your dip.
Yeah, that is purely frightening, and really, really well put together. So, no, I have no problems with the villains in this film. I think they do a sound job.
Richard Roxburgh's an odd one. Because I know this film and some others that he's in. I assume he's fairly well known, but he isn't really. And he was in. It's so underrated. There was a pilot of a Sherlock Holmes just before the Benedict Cumberbatch one, which was set in the Victorian era with what's his name? Rupert Everett was Sherlock Holmes, and he had him smoking weed in it and everything. And Richard Roxburgh was John Watson in that. It was really good, but they just did one of them, and then I don't know whether they decided not to do any more. And then, of course, you got the most famous one, the Benedict Cumberbatch and Martin Freeman one. But yeah, I think he's just stereotypical, really unlikable henchman in this. I get that death scene is so well directed. The shots are brilliant. The reason that one of the shots which does it all is when the henchman brings Hunt in. Well, you think it's Hunt. There's a shot through the eyes of Hunt looking at the room, which immediately tricks you. Like, oh right, that must be Hunt. And you know, you'd never think that it could possibly be anyone else. And it's just, yeah, it's funny to watch back that. Oh, why don't you just look at his finger? You know, but it works cinematically. It works brilliantly, that scene, I think.
Yeah, and it's got a good setup from, you know, having the whole cigar chopping off the end of that finger anyway, which again sets up his death perfectly. But kind of like that. I mean, we spoke about the villains. Let's talk the score. Hans Zimmer on board for a Mission Impossible film. Now, this is in isolation, because I said this is only the second time I've ever seen this film. In isolation, I don't like the score. It's not a Hans Zimmer score I can listen to when I'm like a walk or driving or whatnot. But actually, rewatching this film, it is the perfect score for what this film is being. For what this film is, for the action it's doing, the score works. And I would give it that. It's Hans Zimmer. I should never have doubted the genius. It only leads me to a terrible predicament. No one knows I'm going to do this in this video. So I have here, if anyone collects vinyls, there is an incredible Mission Impossible set done by Mondo. So they did Mission Impossible Fallout back in 2018 when it came out. Phenomenal soundtrack, Lorne Balfe. We'll talk about it in a few weeks' time. And then it was such a big success. They've basically done the scores to 1, 2, 3, and 4. Obviously, Fallout's out, which is 6. So next year they'll probably do 5 Dead Reckoning parts 1 and 2. So they almost do 1 a year. When the 4th one came out, Ghost Protocol, they did this box set. And so if you ordered Ghost Protocol from Mondo, you basically were able to get the collector's case. We have to put all 4 soundtracks in. Somehow, unknown, during COVID, I didn't order the Mission Impossible 2 vinyl. So I have Mission Impossible 1, 3, and 4 in this box set. All the artworks match on them. Like they're pretty sensational. The backgrounds, everything. The art. Mondo always do good vinyls for anyone curious that does get soundtracks. But enough of that. To buy the Hans Zimmer one, because they're all limited edition, they're always on limited runs. It's over £200 on eBay, and I can't stomach. But I sit here with I've got 3 out of 4.
Incomplete vinyl collection.
Yeah. And it's all collector's edition. And at the red carpet in a few weeks, if I'm lucky, there's going to be an autograph from Tom Cruise on it as well, which makes it worse.
Yes. I'm going to make you feel even worse. That's only going to go up in price because it's going to come like rare.
Well, I've got a few on my watch, but I just don't want to pull the trigger because I bought those Jordans for Spider-Verse, which has cost me. But that's my soundtrack scenario. That at some point I need to buy the Mission Impossible 2 vinyl, get that story out of the way. I don't mind the score. As I said, I've changed it. I can't name you the tunes. The intro today, doing the intros when it was like getting the Mission Impossible 2 theme, I was like, well, at least it's just, not like a standard variation on the theme. It is completely different. But yeah, sorry, Tate. Your thoughts on the soundtrack if you have any?
I mean, it takes a rockier edge to the soundtrack. The soundtrack fits the film, and you can't really kind of criticize the soundtrack for doing that because the soundtrack and score is meant to fit the film that it's given. I don't like it personally, but that's just, that's because I'm not a big fan of the film. It's not because I'm not a big fan of the soundtrack. The soundtrack works perfectly fine for the film. And so does the score to it. And I guess the rocked up version elevates the first film because it shows you exactly what kind of genre it's going to be moving more into with this film. It's moving more towards an action film. It's not going to be kind of that slow spy kind of procedural and stuff like that. Just like with the later films, they have different blends with friction kind of blending into the theme and stuff like that for one that's, maybe a little bit more modern, maybe a little bit more up-tempo, maybe a little bit more contemporary and stuff like that. Whereas this film, it goes with the kind of hard rock, I've used the word before this review, edgy kind of early 2000s kind of shades on, kind of got a look and sound cool kind of edge to it. And it works for the film. It really does.
It's a really unusual soundtrack, this, because, again, I didn't really know Hans Zimmer that well. And so, maybe Gladiator and Pearl Harbor as well, unbelievable soundtrack. That's when I sort of got into his work. And then then the same sort of year, this was going on. Lisa Gerrard as well.
Yeah.
And and because the songs were so huge, I hope we can talk about them later, but because it was more of like a soundtrack film rather than a score film, you can actually get the score separate on a separate thing. And there's a program that's on, I think it's Hollywood in Vienna. You need to check this out. Every year they honor a composer, and they get the composer there, and they come and conduct some of the tracks. And one year they did Hans Zimmer, and they did like a 10-minute version of part of this score with Lisa Gerrard, and it's like the most epic music you've ever heard. It's not rock. It's like a bit of wailing, and it's completely inappropriate for the amount of work that's got in for sort of a generic action film. But those bits where they're stealing the Chimera and there's like, the sort of her singing and everything, it's so epic. I've completely forgotten about these bits. But the guitar theme for Naya is so nice. The
Very Gladiator.
Yeah. It's very
And same year though, isn't it?
it
They
is.
did straight from Gladiator
Yeah.
to Mission Impossible 2.
It's just, I think it's an absolutely outstanding soundtrack from Hans Zimmer, and I contrary to what you said, George, I'd listen to this definitely on. If you listen to it outside the film, you probably get a lot more out of it because there's so much explosion and noise in the film that you don't hear an awful lot of it. And I mean, to be fair, they're all good, aren't they? The scores for these films. Michael Giacchino is brilliant, and Lorne Balfe's been outstanding. But this is the most unique. Like the film, it stands out by a mile. And then you've got these. I mean, if we want to talk about the songs, this was massive. The Limp Bizkit version of the film, absolutely amazing. And
The
then
Limp
and then
Bizkit theme.
Metallica at the end with one of their best songs, in my opinion. It's unbelievable.
The Limp Bizkit stuff, it's still like, again, I think because of how big Mission Impossible's been in the decade since, right? You go back to Mission Impossible 2, and it's like, not like a stepchild or anything, but it is this insane, like, as you keep saying, you had to have been there because Metallica, Limp Bizkit, I'm going to chuck Lisa Gerrard in as well. All of these things coming together, and I believe the Metallica one, I don't know the court case, I'm not going to bore in with it, but that led to a very, very famous court case with Metallica and Napster, I believe. And that apparently changed the music industry. So I'm guessing they like leaked an album online or something before, maybe. But as you're right, it's a soundtrack that there are other artists involved. I know the first Mission Impossible film, there was that someone did a remix to the theme. Was it U2 or Bono? Someone like that.
Yeah.
And I'm going to guess that
you're right.
big hit that they went all out for the second one to do that again. And I can see why it has its moments. I will just say, last thing about the score for me, I did listen to it in isolation when I was out for a walk after rewatching it, and that's where the Lisa Gerrard stuff really comes on board. I was watching it, I was thinking, yeah, this is probably Lisa Gerrard. Listening to it, I was like, yeah, like they've gone straight again from Gladiator. Like they've clearly had an incredible time making what is one of the greatest films ever made. And Hans Zimmer's like, Lisa, come back. We've got Mission Impossible now.
Yeah.
And it is just, and you know what, I'd say this, Hans Zimmer's my favourite composer. I know that Lorne Balfe is very much not like his understudy, but if anyone's read into like the Hans Zimmer, I don't know what the time is. He runs like a record label or something.
Yeah.
Where a lot of composers come through under the Hans Zimmer sort of ranks and scores. Lorne Balfe is one of those, and I know Lorne Balfe's going to probably do Dead Reckoning Part 2 as well. But I'd love to have today's Hans Zimmer doing today's Mission Impossible. I know he did, of course, Top Gun Maverick. He was involved. But I just think Hans Zimmer approach would be incredible. But I'm very happy with who they've got.
Yeah. Would it work better now that, he's also done like Bond,
Yeah. I think Hans Zimmer's going around, not picking films to like tick them off like Thanos, but now he's doing a lot of tours. When this video comes out, he's in London like a week after, and we'll be there again. And I do think some of it is, when he's taking some of these projects, he's there thinking, I can do this on stage. And I think that's exactly where Bond came from, and a few others. And I would love, love, love to see him do another Mission Impossible.
Exactly. I mean, I have no other kind of thoughts on the score, so if anyone else wants to go.
Well, I mean, the songs, honestly, the Limp Bizkit song was massive at the time, particularly in England. I mean, the Limp Bizkit were enormous for about 5 minutes, a bit longer. But when they were there, they were just, and then Fred Durst was going out with Britney, and it was getting ridiculous. but it's such a good song. So I don't care what anyone says, and the way it uses the guitar is so good. But the Metallica one's not a very well known song. It's got a really expensive video though, massive music video for it, and he probably didn't wait until the end credits, but it's so epic, that song. And that was, even then Metallica were a bit. Yeah, they're still huge, but it's quite an old-fashioned artist to get for this kind of thing. They're not coming with the latest hip young thing. They're like, no, this is a Metallica film, so we're going to use them. And I think, it's very Matrixy, all the leathers, the sunglasses, this music, the long hair, the grungy feel. It's just it could only have happened at this time. All these different things, and the music's the same.
No, absolutely. And SB sort of carried through with that. going to talk about one song in a moment. So we're going to move in stunts. So what we do this section, we take the big stunts from the film. In this one, I'd say we've got sort of, aside from the constant action set pieces, we sort of have the opening rock climbing sequence and the motorbike chase / final fight, because they sort of merge together as like talking points. The rock climbing is one of the most bizarre but wonderful things I've ever seen in a film. And now the idea came from Tom Cruise, and he was adamant that what better way to reintroduce the audience to Ethan Hunt as him rock climbing. Listen, the Eco song playing, I've got no idea what's going on, but it works. I don't know why it works, but I feel like it works really well. And some of the behind the scenes where there's a few things with John Woo that started coming in. John Woo didn't want Tom Cruise to do the stunts. Of course, Tom Cruise did the stunts. And John Woo was basically spending every day on set thinking he's going to be responsible for the death of Tom Cruise. And now, obviously, given he's done so many action films before, John Woo, not just Cruise, I'd imagine he's used to doubles coming in. And Tom Cruise did have an injury doing the jump on the rock climbing, as he gets a lot of injuries in these films. And there was no safety net below. Which I still don't know what to think about that. It's Tom Cruise, yes, but
he's insane.
He's insane. I mean, the worst thing is, I think the worst one's the motorbike chase at the end. But he wore a thin wire for this and a harness. That was it, so they could see right out. But I really liked. It's like the earliest days, right? When you look at the first Mission Impossible, you got the train sequence, and the discussion was, that's today. That's going to be all real. You get the great him dangling down. The rock climbing to me is the first one where it's like, Tom Cruise wants to do rock climbing, and that's why it's there. It was all over the marketing. It was all over the trailers. It's like the earliest signs of when we get to, Ghost Protocol. Like Tom Cruise wanted to climb the tallest building in the world. There's like Tom Cruise wanted to hang off an airplane. Then he wanted to do underwater, blah, blah, blah. And it's, I think the rock climbing is the biggest sign of what's to come over the next 20 years. And I like it. It's so weird, but it stands out.
It's his kind of push towards creative control over these films. It becomes less of kind of, oh, I'm starring as part of this franchise, to this is my franchise. I will do what I want with it. And yeah, like I said, my earliest memories of the film were 2 stunt set pieces from this film. It was the opening rock climbing sequence, and it was the motorbike chase at the end. So the fact that those 2 things stood out for me, kind of from my memories of watching the film way back when, show those scenes, have kind of a long-staying memory in a lot of people. And I think whenever I've spoken to other people about Mission Impossible 2, the first thing they say is, "Oh, is that the one with the rock climbing in it at the start?" I'm like, yeah, it is that one. Yeah. Which is crazy. It has absolutely nothing to do with the rest of the film. It's just kind of an impressive sequence of Tom Cruise
rock climbing,
just free soloing, or his character free soloing, even if he's got a wire attached. Like, it's so stupid, and it makes no sense as to kind of has no fitting within the film. You could easily remove the scene, have him sat in a cafe somewhere, or just get the notification, okay, we need you to track things down. He could be on another mission, he could be doing anything else, but no, Tom Cruise is rock climbing. That there is no threat there. He's just rock climbing. Living life dangerously on the edge, as cool people do. So that's kind of where we start the film, and then there's a bunch of gunfights in this film. I think one that really stands out for me isn't even a stunt. It's just where he blows up the door, and you suddenly have that John Woo shot, because I haven't really talked about the John Woo shots of slow motion with the pigeons flying through and stuff like that, him walking through the fire in the door, and it's just such a signature stamp of whether it's doves or pigeons and the slow motion coming through and stuff like that. It's just bonkers and insane. And I guess the gunfight at the end, you also have that finishing part to that sequence where the gun gets flipped into the air in slow motion, and it's just that's just John Woo as a whole. But yeah, the motorbike chase scene at the end, with like kind of the chase to start off with, and then it ends with what I can only describe as like kind of motorcycle jousting. And then they just, it's so funny, they recreate the shot from The Matrix just without the slow-mo. They just kind of collide in with each other and spin off afterwards. It's so weird. But yeah, no, all those scenes, really, really interesting. And this is the only kind of tidbit I knew from this film beforehand, the fact they used a real knife at the end and kind of pulled it close to Tom Cruise. Is that the one where he wore like a contact lens, or is that a different film?
So my understanding reading into this is that they designed some kind of device where Douglas Scott could push the real knife with all of his pressure and strength, and a device they had, I'm guessing maybe holding the knife or above it, meant they could get it as close as they could to Tom Cruise's eye, knowing it could never actually get to the eye. And that's about, there were, again, more issues of John Woo not being comfortable as the director. And I've just got to say as well, like, can you picture the news article, like, in the year 2000 or 99 or whatever, like, Tom Cruise, like, you know, died on set through a knife. You think of John Wick 3, right? When they do the knife through the eyeball, which is disgusting.
Yeah.
And then you're there, like, they designed it so Tom Cruise could do it because it looks more real with a knife. And I just have to give them credit. It's ludicrous, it's ridiculous, but you know what? It works, and he is genuinely gonna, you know, those die-trying stunt things. It clearly wasn't just recently, was it? It's been around for decades, and the knife on the eye, it actually makes watching the scene uncomfortable for me, which I kind of respect it for.
Dare I say, he probably went, oh, so we've got a scene where, you know, he's meant to get close to stabbing me, and he's like, oh yeah, we'll just get like a CGI knife, or, you know, we'll just kind of get the knife,
like a rubber knife or something, you know?
like a rubber knife or something. Like, it'll go close to your eye, but it won't go into your eye. And he's like, no, I want it to be a real knife. But Tom, we don't. This is a film. We don't need a real knife. He's like, no. It needs to be a real knife. Like, it needs to be almost stabbing me.
Imagine like being told, like, you're putting all the pressure on. Don't worry, this works. If it doesn't work, is that manslaughter? Like,
yes,
you know, it's quite scary.
We had that kind of similarities with the film Rust recently. With Alec Baldwin and that whole thing of, you know, is it a prop gun? Is it loaded? Kind of thing. That's this situation. Not only is he holding a gun to his head, but it is loaded. But he's being told that if he pulls the trigger, nothing happens. That's the situation, basically.
Yeah,
that's a bit scary.
With that, I think like John Orta, you might know him behind the stunts. He's of the mind. Sorry, he should not be doing any of this. Tom Cruise. It's all well and good, but there are people who are trained to do this. But that's another debate, and that's where it becomes. I think it's the whole you like. He wants you to think that the star, the hero, is actually doing it all, and I can understand that. But that introduction on the rock face is absolutely dazzling. It's totally right. There's no need for it. But what it does is, after 5 years out, it reintroduces or 4 years out, it reintroduces the character. Like, this is the coolest guy on the planet. It's the way he sort of flips back. I can't believe that it's real.
Goes into the kind of Herculean hold of just like
because you couldn't. It'd be too slow if you had an action scene there, or like a chase, because you can't. You know, you wouldn't work with it. So I think that's the best way to do it. But some of those, it's so John. I know a lot of it is very Matrixy, but John Woo was doing this. He's been doing this all the 90s. So to be fair to him, like that shot where he passes across when he's just blown off the door, and it just, you see the doves and everything. Yeah, it's so cool. I know it's cliches, and it's a bit like John Glenn with his pigeons, isn't it? But I think the action in this is. I think most people would have to agree it's the best bit of the film, the strong point of the film, and it goes all out. That finale for me is one of the best I've ever seen in any film. I think, never mind these Mission Impossible films, because the motorbike is relentless. There's so many elements to it. Like when it's so unnecessary when he puts his feet down on the floor next to it, and he's riding along. It's like, what? It's so good though. But then one of them, he's sort of. All the sort of dust goes in their eyes, and they smash into the tanker. The bit where he does a wheelie, and it's so John Woo. There's about 10 shots, so the time doesn't pass. You see, like it's a total overkill. But you by this point, you're like, give me more. I'm bored in this nonsense. Brilliant. But that joust, like you say, Tate, where they both come off basically and jump on each other. It's a bit like the second Planet of the Apes film, you know, with is it the third one? Yeah, with Cobra and all that, and it's just this is exactly what a kid would, you know, like a teenage kid is thinking. This is the greatest thing I've ever seen, and I watched it again and again the other night because it's just so good, and it's a really good fist fight. It's a proper fist fight, so it's ticking every box, and then you know he's not dead. You know when he sort of bangs his head on that rock, but the way that the score is like the boom, 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 and he kicks the sand. That for me is one of the.
For me, I mean, I know it's Hong Kong cinema, but for me that was straight out of like Bollywood, Tollywood kind of, like, you know.
It's so visual, isn't it?
Yeah, you see that like every now and then you see videos of like, oh, this is what Bollywood movies are doing right now. It's like people flipping out of cars, like sliding out, like picking up guns. That exactly just kind of mirrored that straight off the bat.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. And kind of in line with that, guys, heading into the finale, do we have a favourite scene each from the film? I know, Tate, you mentioned it earlier, but for mine, I've got to go with that end action sequence you just explained masterfully, Tom. It's earned, and it doesn't. It's like they've bulked up. They've had so many gunfights throughout. They have saved like the most insane possible one, because that could be 2-3 sequences throughout the films. But they have waited, and they've absolutely delivered. And I know it's people going mad compared to Michael Bay, but it's like smallest car flips, boom, explosion. And I love that kind of stuff as well. And again, we know these are stunts. We know this is practical. We're seeing this is not CG. And I think that just makes these kind of action films so much more exciting. And the motorbike stuff, it's the whole Matrix thing again for me. It's like the costume more so than the actual action, that the sunglasses, the trench coat, the black motorbike, it feels like Tom Cruise watched The Matrix and was like, I'm going to do this in Mission Impossible. The flips and the spins are just, I'm not saying comical, but they are so entertaining, which is what I haven't felt like. And, you know, in that first film, you know, I don't think Tom Cruise's character fires a gun. Yet in this one, he's John Wick. But yeah, so that's my favourite scene. I know it's more of like a segment, but just before we get to final thoughts, that is my favourite scene. Tate?
So my favourite scene, once again, is Hugh Stamp's death and the kind of the switch out, the switcheroo, the face reveal, and everything kind of involved in that. I'd say if I could extend that scene, it would include kind of the fist fight beforehand with Hugh Stamp, because that is an even fight. That's a proper like Bond versus the henchman kind of fight, if we're kind of calling back to kind of something closer to James Bond. But no, that entire scene with the reveal is just so well put together and so well done. There's tension to that scene. You don't know what's going to happen. You're not sure what's going on. You get that POV perspective, which puts you in the eyes of kind of, you know, what you think is Tom Cruise. It's just so well put together and so well filmed and very well edited as well in that scene.
No one mentions Brendan Gleeson's in this film.
I was going to say Brendan Gleeson is in this film.
And again, no one.
I'd say they're underused though. That's my
and I don't know what happens to him. I mean, that must have been cut. I don't. Because I suppose the audience don't care. He's got out of there now. We don't care. But yeah, in terms of the other, I mean, we haven't even mentioned the chase, the car chase, where they're like riding up against each other on the side of the cliff. It's absolutely incredible.
They did watch Goldeneye. That was literally because of Goldeneye. They like put that scene in the film.
It's so similar. Yeah, I know it is. But the way it's filmed is so, again, overly stylish for most people. But the way that it just stops and they're looking at each other, and it's almost like this is part of the whole fall in love kind of thing somehow. And it goes from her, you know, I can't stand this guy, to he saved my life, and that sort of, but like, you know, it does look like it's her like hanging off this cliff, and he's just pulled her up. It's pretty incredible that. But the best scene has got to be for me the end finale. And one more shot that I've got to mention is they come onto a bridge. He comes down onto a bridge where the cars are coming at him, and then I think Ving Rhames fires a missile and blows it up, and then Tom Cruise just comes through the fire.
Yeah, that one.
You did. You're like, come. This is pretty cool, isn't it? What a film.
The words "pretty cool" is exactly what their pitch was. We're going to make Mission Impossible pretty cool.
Yeah, yeah.
And you can picture Tom Cruise saying, you can hear him saying it as well, can't you? Like,
yeah. Unbelievable.
Yeah, bang on. And kind of final thoughts for me. You know what? I'll say this for the film. I've crapped on a fair amount over the years, not watched. This has been like some open therapy that we've not picked it apart. I've had a lot of fun with this, and I think this has kind of lifted the film for me. It's still obviously not my favorite Mission Impossible, but I think my respect for this film is now through the roof compared to maybe where it was before. And I'm curious about a rewatch, maybe before Dead Reckoning Part 2. I can't rewatch them at the moment because we need to watch the others. But certainly I want to watch some more John Woo films, and I really want to watch Face Off now. I've not seen it in about a year or two, and I feel Face Off is one of those films you should watch annually. But no, back to Mission Impossible. I think it's fine. I said it's not great. It's not on par with a lot of the others. And maybe because it's such a great series, 2 stands out that little bit more. Had there been 20 films, they've not all been bangers, you'd understand it a bit more. But certainly for me, this stands out because of the quality of the other 6. So a bit of a weird one for me. Don't have specific final thoughts, but yeah, this conversation's helped massively actually.
This is I mean, my thoughts on it. I'm still not a fan of it. My kind of opinion falls on it whether the fact of if this film had different characters under a different name, if it wasn't a Mission Impossible film, would it be a good film? And realistically, a John Woo film, it'd probably be a decent John Woo film. But the second you attach that name to it, the second you attach those characters to it, especially based off the first film, it's such a far cry. And when we look down the series, the quality only goes up from there, and the quality was there in the first place. This is a big dip. And because of that, it does fall down for me. Yeah. There are some moments which I can take from which we're like, oh, cool, that's great, and stuff like that. But it dare I say, it is the low point of the franchise. Like, whether it's liked or not, this is undoubtedly not the best film. Like, probably the worst film out of all of them. And I'm not sure how the rest of kind of the Mission Impossible fan base feels about it. Whether it's kind of more loved more than other films, but from my understanding of kind of the general people I speak to about films and stuff like that, this isn't very well loved at all. And at least there's 2 people giving it some love here on the channel and stuff like that. But the way I see it is this is the low point of the franchise, and it only goes up from here.
Yeah, I completely understand. I think you could argue that this is the worst in the series, but it's also a brilliant film because, like George says, the standard of filmmaking in this series is unbelievable. And I think, particularly when you're a kid, the first one, other than a couple of massive action scenes, it's not the most exciting. This isn't. This was a 15, but it's a lot more exciting for the attention span. And it's got a decent plot and all the chimera stuff. I don't mind all that. It's fairly simple. In terms of the third one was the one which really captured my imagination again, but it didn't actually. You'll talk about it next week, but it didn't do that well at the box office. It was only sort of after that they really kicked on.
The third one's gained a massive cult following.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. But it was using that blueprint, the J.J. Abrams blueprint, and I think they needed that. But for me, I think. Because most Mission Impossible fans now just think of the first one and the others are similar. This is like the black sheep, isn't it? It's the unloved one. But then you think, hang on, wait a minute. John Woo is an acquired taste, but loads of people love his action films. Surely they love this then. I mean, this you get Tom Cruise and John Woo. So I think if you judge it like Tayte said as just an action film, if it wasn't Tom Cruise, it might even get a bit more love because you're like, this is an underrated action film with some of the greatest scenes, set pieces you've ever seen. I like the romance, which I mentioned, that stood out for me this time. I think the score, the performances are very good. It's difficult because I always like an underdog. I'm obsessed with Superman 3. It's absolutely amazing, but of course it's not as good technically as the first 2. There's a lot of films like this that I like to champion. Of course, objectively, Mission Impossible 2 is not the best of the series. But if I've got 2 hours to throw on any of the films, I might choose this first because the other ones are so good and intense that this is a more, I don't know, less high stakes, like you said, Tate, and you can just enjoy it, and you can almost skip to these action scenes and watch them and be absolutely dazzled by them. And I do think it's overlooked, and the fact that it was the biggest film of the year is hilarious, given it was a 15 as well. I can't. I don't know what's happened. I don't know why.
But
I don't know what happened. I don't know what's going on with its legacy at all.
dare I say, if you have 2 hours free, would you watch Mission Impossible 2, or would you watch just a random cheesy Bond film from like the Roger Moore era?
Fair enough. Yeah,
But then it's how do you pick the Bond film though? Do you want to put Die
Bond
Never Day on, or do you want to put Casino Royale on? You're going to get
you
different experience.
Too many.
Anything for whatever experience you wanted.
Yeah.
Die Another Day would be a good comparison to this film, but I feel like Die Another Day has better.
I actually think it's more like Casino to Quantum. That you got Casino Royale, which is that thriller, not paranoid like the first one, but not big on the action set pieces. It's got its moments. Then you get the next one, and it's the all-out action film, I'd say, where they're going to try and do everything. Very different circumstances, both these series, but the first and second film of that respective actor's tenure as well.
But I prefer Quantum.
I know you
like
do.
Quantum.
Great. Yeah,
Quantum's a great film.
It is. Yeah, it is. Yeah, I think if you just enjoy it for what it is, and what was going on back then, it was very different. I think if you sort of put it into context, it does stick out like a sore thumb. But I just don't think people have revisited it, and the fact that I hadn't revisited it until recently, it was like watching a new film. And then every time I watch it, I get something new from it. There's certain films where you know them inside out and they're exactly like you remembered. But with this one, it just feels different every time.
One thing I will say is, if they do re-show all of the Mission Impossible films in cinema before the release of Dead Reckoning Part 2, this one I'd probably watch over Mission Impossible 1 in cinema.
Oh, yeah.
This is one you want to crowd like the Prince Charles in London or something. Like you want to crowd for this one.
Yeah,
and I want a silent room for the first one just to take it in. Let's get pitched into Universal. Do a re-release next year. It actually probably works. It's coming out in June. But yeah, well, listen, this has been a pretty amazing discussion, as I kind of said earlier. And what we want to do, we want to hear from everybody that's been watching at home. So maybe has your mind been changed like mine? Not my mind changed on the film, but the stuff I've enjoyed from this film has been on show a lot more. So do comment below with your thoughts on Mission Impossible 2. I said, if you like this video, if you like the channel, do hit the subscribe button. We've got a lot more Mission Impossible coming your way. That, of course, kickstarts next week with Mission Impossible 3, Tuesday the 13th of June. That is going to be a very interesting discussion. I have not rewatched this for quite a while now. And I watched Magnolia for the first time a few weeks ago. Also stars Philip Seymour Hoffman and Tom Cruise together in scene. So that's almost like an unofficial bit of homework I did. Not that it's really obviously going to be a Mission Impossible film at that point. But aside from that, Tom, we've got the Radio 007 social scrolling at the bottom of the screen as we speak. For anyone that doesn't subscribe to, you've been on a lot of our stuff, not just James Bond stuff, not now Mission Impossible. You've been on our Spielberg stuff. Had you on for so many different videos. What are you guys up to at the moment? I know I was very lucky to be on one of your new series, but just in case people don't follow you and they should.
Yeah, well, we're actually looking a bit at the Octopussy 40th anniversary. So I think we were on your episode of that, weren't we, George, back in the day, when you were doing your retrospective. So it's a film, again, a bit like this, which seems to have been forgotten a bit and unloved in the series, but there are actually loads of sort of Bond fans who love it. So we'll be doing a special on that. We've got a couple of interviews regarding the film, and we'll be releasing episodes all the time. You can catch us on Really 007 Pod at YouTube and then iTunes and Spotify for the audio episodes. But yeah, it's been great to join you guys and meet Tayte for the first time, and love what you're doing, guys.
Lovely. Thank you for that. And for anyone watching at home, if you want to get us on our social medias, links are in the description. Twitter and Instagram at cinema_savvy, Facebook, letterboxd.com/cinemasavvy. Link to Redbubble in that description below. It's blockbuster season. There's a lot of new releases out. I think Transformers is out this week at the time of this video being released. Yes, it is. We're pre-recording this, guys. We're pre-recording this fairly early, so any reviews will be on the main channel as they always are. But these Mission Impossible reviews are coming every single Tuesday. As I said, we are building up to Dead Reckoning Part 1. So I think that rounds out everything. Tayte, if I missed anything, I don't know if I have.
No, not at all. Just make sure that you've watched the films before you kind of come onto the reviews. We may have spoiled Mission Impossible 2 for you, and make sure that you've caught up for Mission Impossible 3 before we go into the review as well, because that one's going to be a fun discussion.
Absolutely, and like I said, everyone do join us next week for that. We cannot wait to talk about it, and we'll see you on the next one. Take care.